proud to announce the creation of the first ever White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention, the first office in our history. Created by executive order, I determined to send a clear message about how important this issue is to me and to the country.
So President Biden just announced that he's going to use the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act to put in place a new office called the Gun Violence Prevention Office. So let's talk about this. But real quick before we jump into this video, if you think something like this, where you have an executive agency or an executive office, which goes directly against our Second Amendment rights, is clearly unconstitutional, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. Also, I want to thank one of the main supporters of this channel, which is Blackout Coffee. Blackout Coffee has amazing coffee and they're huge Second Amendment supporters. They have dedicated roasts for a variety of 2A organizations. So if you purchase some of their coffee using the links down below, you also donate to those organizations. And make sure if you pick up some coffee, use the code ARMSCHOLAR for 10% off of your order. So like I mentioned in the intro, in this video, we're going to be talking about the new executive office that President Biden is putting in place while using the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. This new office that he's announcing, and he just got out of a press conference and press release about it, it is the Gun Violence Prevention Office. And the whole goal of this, according to Biden, is leveraging some of the new language that was passed through the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act to put in place an office through executive action, which I guess in some ways is trying to accumulate some of the force, utilize some of the executive power to further implement the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, and then also look at other executive actions that they can take. Now, if you're not aware of what the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act did, this was something that was passed recently, and it was passed in direct response to what happened recently in Uvalde. After Uvalde, there was a lot of calls for national gun control, a new national gun control law, and ultimately what ended up happening is through, I guess, a bipartisan effort, essentially just some rhinos in Congress, in the House and Senate, joined the left-leaning liberal side, the anti-gun side, to put in place the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. It was passed and then signed by President Biden. Some of the things that it did is it had some increased background checks for individuals 18 to 21. And then there was some language in there which talked about federal funding for red flag laws. So the federal government is incentivizing states that have current red flag laws to implement them more aggressively. And then it's also holding out federal money for those states that don't currently have red flag laws. It's holding out this huge carrot for them to put in place their own state level red flag laws. But there was a lot more language that was included in the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. And one of the questions I had and a lot of other people had is what was the Biden administration and the executive agencies going to do in response to all this new language that was added into the federal law? And recently what we saw happen is the ATF introduced a new rule. One of the new rules that they put in place was essentially a national ban on private party transactions. They are putting in place new restrictions for who needs to have an FFL to engage in certain private party transactions. So this is their way of trying to put in place what they claim is universal background checks. So again, they are leveraging some of the language in the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act to put in place what they believe is essentially restrictions on private party transactions. And now the newest thing that they're going to do is the Biden administration, through executive order, leveraging the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, is putting in place this federal agency or office, which is the Gun Violence Prevention Office. This new office is going to sit, I believe, under the DOJ's banner. And the question is, I guess, really, what are they going to do going forward? The new office is going to be overseen by Vice President Kamala Harris, and it's also going to be led by Stephanie Feldman, who I believe is a longtime policy advisor of the Biden administration and Biden himself. And she's helped him kind of put in place some gun policy and some gun control issues that she wanted the administration to push. So he's kind of her main go-to gun control person. Also within this office is going to be other individuals like Greg Jackson, who is the executive director of the Community Justice Action Fund, and then also Rob Wilcox, who is an Everytown for Gun Safety senior director and kind of oversees some of their federal government affairs and some of the things that they want to push at a federal level. So as you can see within this office, you're going to have at its head and kind of oversight is going to be Kamala Harris, which, you know, former attorney general of California, and put in place and oversaw a lot of the things that we're currently dealing with here in California as far as gun control. She's going to be heading the office, and then you're going to have a policy director of Biden also kind of taking the lead, and then you're going to have on that same office and board a bunch of anti-gun, gun control advocacy group reps who are going to be advising the administration of what they should do. And again, this is all being done at a federal level. This is an executive office through executive action that's being put in place that is going to try to leverage federal funding, federal mechanisms to attack our right to keep and bear arms. So here are just a few things that President Biden said during this announcement of him announcing this new office for gun violence prevention. So during this whole announcement, he also said that there are going to be 4 main tasks, and I wrote them down as while I was kind of watching this. And he said, first, it's going to expedite the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act and look at some of the executive actions that they can take. It's going to coordinate support between a variety of organizations and try to get alleging to him some relief and identify some of these situations that happen. And he says that they're going to try to operate kind of like FEMA to get relief to some of these areas when something like this happens. And then he talks about also expanding state and local coalitions. So trying to work with anti-gun states, anti-gun communities and cities to put in place further gun control restrictions. So this is all to say that what Biden just announced with the Gun Violence Prevention Office is not a good thing. They're using executive action to put in place an office that's going to operate under the DOJ, maybe coordinate with the ATF, the Department of Treasury, and maybe other offices to further implement gun control. One of the really concerning things that I heard during this whole speech is that they're going to help to try to expedite the usage of the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which means they're going to try to leverage this office along with the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act to put in place further gun control and make it more expedient and maybe go around Congress is what it sounds like. They talked about trying to get around some of the red tape of Congress, and I think that's what they're going to try to do with this new office. They also said that they're going to use this office to essentially pitch new executive actions that the Biden administration can do. Like I mentioned, we've seen the ATF be very aggressive recently with their new rules like the rule against pistol braces, their rules against unfinished frames and receivers, and then recently their new rule leveraging the Bipartisan Safe Communities Act to put in place this restriction on private party transactions and further putting in place requirements for FFLs, licensing, and requiring background checks for private party transactions. I foresee because of this office, we're going to see a lot more new rules through the ATF and maybe other offices. And again, something concerning that I heard during this whole announcement is, again, he's pushing for bans on so-called assault weapons and bans on so-called large capacity magazines. And he talked about how he doesn't want to wait for Congress. So maybe the sentiment is they're going to try to find a way through this office, leveraging the ATF, maybe leveraging the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act to try to find a way to circumvent Congress, get around some of the red tape of the legislator, and maybe put in place a new rule through the DOJ or ATF or someone that targets those types of items. Now, again, speculation. We don't have a whole lot of context about what this vague gun violence prevention office is going to do, but they have indicated that they are going to be trying to be very aggressive with executive actions, which is never a good thing for the Second Amendment movement. They always, when these executive rules and actions take place, it always cuts against our right to keep and bear arms. So as we get more information, as we get more details, I will let you guys know. But if you like this video and you'd like to support the channel, one of the best ways to do this is to like, comment, and subscribe. As always, I want to thank everybody who likes, comments, subscribes, who hits the notification bell, who shares these videos. You guys are directly impacting these videos, impacting this channel, and helping me to reach and educate more people than I could ever do on my own. So as always, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And never forget, this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.